In this video, I'd like to go over something that I don't hear too many other people talking about, including the Andrew Yang campaign, which I'm really baffled by unless they're not able to speak on this. Admittedly, I'm also new to this, so I'm not by no means an expert, but I just want to bring this to your attention because I believe it's the most important thing you can do to help Andrew Yang win the nomination. So this race could come down to more than two candidates. Uh, Possibly there might be three candidates that it'll come down to, or maybe even four or more, who knows. But in the event that it doesn't come down to two candidates, most likely no candidate will receive the majority of delegates. When this happens, the result is what's called a brokered convention. Let me take you to Wikipedia page, which explains a little bit more about that. In the United States politics, a brokered convention can occur during a presidential election when a political party fails to choose a nominee on the first round of delegate voting at the party's nominating convention. So the first round of delegate voting is more or less just a formality. It's essentially just tallying up the voting and the caucusing that went on before everyone meets at the nominating convention. So once the tally all that up and no candidate receives the majority of the delegates, then that results in a brokered convention, and then they have to vote again. But what's important is, so as many of you probably know, there are like super delegates and then regular delegates. Super delegates are former presidents, basically just people who are important within the party. So DNC members, other people who hold public office, former presidents, etc. So those individuals can vote for whichever candidate they want. They're not beholden to any candidate. But the regular delegates, they're pledged to whatever the voting results are in their, district, their state, etc. So they have to vote for whichever candidate wins their district, etc., that they're pledged to. But when there's no majority and the result is a brokered convention, these delegates, regular delegates, are released and are able to switch their allegiance to a different candidate. So essentially they become super delegates and they can vote for whichever candidate they want. That's really important because the idea is that we're trying to get to one candidate having the majority of delegates. So there's going to be a lot of negotiating at the conventions to try to give one candidate a clear majority of delegates. This is really, really critical because if we get more Andrew Yang supporters to become regular delegates, then we can possibly sway the voting to nominate, to give Andrew Yang the majority of delegates and essentially give him the nomination. So it's really, really critical. It's probably the most critical thing you can do is to actually apply to be a regular delegate for Andrew Yang. I know some people have been getting, text messages from the campaign asking to be delegates. So I suggest you, really, really consider it. In this video, I'm not going to go over what all that entails because, again, I'm by no means an expert and I'm still learning myself. But let me just go through a video I came across that gives you a little bit of idea of the delegate selection process and all that. So let me just play that video now.
There are rules for each state's delegation. First, each state's delegation must be made up of 50% men and 50% women. Second, each state must have goals for the number of delegates who are African Americans, Hispanics, Native Americans, Asian Americans, and Pacific Islanders. Third, each state must make efforts to get underrepresented groups involved. As mentioned earlier, in addition to the 4,051 pledged delegates, the Democratic Party also has 713 superdelegates. Superdelegates get their position automatically because they hold a certain office, such as being a member of the Democratic National Committee, a member of Congress, a state governor, or a distinguished party leader. Superdelegates are unpledged, so at the convention they are free to support any candidate. In short, people vote in primary elections and caucuses to allocate the pledged delegates. Then those delegates and the superdelegates go to the Democratic Convention and select the party's nominee. The candidate who receives a majority of votes becomes the Democratic nominee for president. If no candidate receives a majority of votes after the delegates vote the first time, the pledged delegates become free to vote for any candidate, and then the delegates continue voting and negotiating until a candidate receives a majority. After the Democratic Party's presidential candidate is chosen, he or she moves on to the general election.
Okay, so that's from a video called the 2016 Democratic Party Delegates. So some rules have changed since then, but that gives you an idea. Anyways, so I hope that makes it pretty clear why it's so important to apply to be a delegate for Andrew Yang. And it's interesting, when they talk about that it has to be 50% male, 50% female, and then also have a nice mix of ethnicity and all of that. So yeah, just keep all that in mind. Do your own research. Again, I'm not an expert. I'm still learning, trying to figure this out. So it's really, this video is really just to let you know, just kind of a heads up on why it's so important to be a delegate for Andrew Yang, because I feel like no one's really stressing this, how important this is, when this could be the one thing that could help Andrew Yang win the nomination. Anyway, I hope all of that makes sense. Please comment below. Let me know if you've been asked to be a delegate for Andrew Yang, and let me know if you're looking into it and applying and all of that. And please share this video, because I think it's really important for more people to know what's going on with all of this, because I feel like a lot of people are still not totally clear on how important this is.